This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Hello and welcome to We Are Starfleet, a Star Trek podcast on the Film Stories Podcast Network. I'm your host Craig, taking over the captain's chair for this episode after a massive explosion has rendered everyone else inert, and I am the only one around. It's just the way it goes. Joining me for this is a former captain who may or may not have a massive head injury and need brain surgery. It's Mike Slammer. Hello.
Hello, I'm coming to you from sickbay, and I might get transferred soon to a starship that has the actual facilities to take care of me.
Yeah, it could happen. We will perhaps find out.
It could happen to anybody, Craig. You never know what's going to happen out there, because risk is our business.
Apparently it is. That's what they keep telling us anyway. Before we get into episode 6 of season 3 of Strange New Worlds, the Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail, we should discuss what socials people can find the podcast on. So as the former captain, current captain, whatever, do you want to take us through how people can find the show and how they can engage with the show?
Yes, of course. The social medias are super important if you want to dialogue with us about anything you thought about while you're listening to the podcast. If you agree, if you disagree, we'd love to hear from you. So give us a shout on Blue Sky, which is at StarfleetPod.bsky.social. You can also find us on Threads and Instagram. Although we don't necessarily keep everything updated all the time through and through, we do have notifications turned on, so send your Subspace Relay messages as you so desire. You can find us on all good podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, wherever you listen to a podcast. Feel free to give us a 5-star review if you liked what you heard. And if you didn't like what you heard, you can still give us a 5-star review because it helps with the algorithm. And we don't use any AI in the creation of these podcasts, so we would love that support.
There you go. That's as succinct as it's going to get. So episode 6 of season 3 of Strange New Worlds features Kirk on his very first command situation. He has to take command in a crisis, and he does so with the help of quite a lot of his future crew. So you could argue that this is potentially a backdoor pilot for the original series reboot that they want to make. The episode is called The Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail. We'll get into why the title is the way it is. We were both on the previous episode, but in case anybody hasn't listened to that one and is on this one for the first time, let's just catch up on our thoughts on the season so far. So what are your thoughts on season 3 up to this point?
Season 3 of Strange New Worlds so far for me has been pretty middling. It just feels like they're going through the motions of a lot of the storylines from season 2. Some of the new plot elements that they've introduced have been fun. They've been imaginative. We had a holodeck episode where the holodeck immediately broke the second they started to use it. And then, of course, a crisis situation occurred. We had a is it a Q? Is it not a Q episode? And that was a fun callback to the original series. But that also felt just like the holodeck episode, just like the Trelane Squire of Gothos episode. These feel like the writers of Strange New Worlds basically looked at some TOS and TNG episodes, copied the scripts, and changed just a little bit, just so they wouldn't get in trouble. It's a little bit like that, and yeah, I should like it more, but I just don't. And for some reason, this season so far has felt very much safe. They're not trying anything too new. They're just giving us a little bit of a continuation and patting us on the head and saying, yeah, you're a Trekkie. You like that? Does that feel good? Does that feel nice? Do you like a holodeck episode? Yeah, we'll rub your back for you. That's kind of what it feels like a little bit. And as an audience member, as a viewer, as someone who's watched Star Trek his entire life, that's a little sour. The candy's a little sour. It's too sweet for my taste.
I'm feeling much the same, although I think I'm actually a lot more critical than you are. I don't like this season very much at all. The first 4 episodes, didn't like any of them. 5th one I thought was an improvement, but in general, when I watch an episode of this show at the moment, I feel a bit intellectually starved. By the end of it, I just don't feel like I've watched anything that's really about something. It's more iterating rather than innovating.
I like that.
And I think that's getting more and more prominent as it goes on. It just seems like the writers don't have much experience in telling interesting science fiction stories. So what they do is they patchwork together a bunch of Star Trek episodes and hope it'll be enough. And it just isn't. You have a holodeck episode, but they're not delivering anything new on the holodeck concept. You have them being messed with by an omnipotent being. They don't do anything new with that idea. You have them fighting zombie Klingons. What's that telling us about anything, really? You have them fighting the Gorn, but they don't figure out a unique or interesting way to deal with them.
Yeah.
Putting them to sleep, that's what they did in The Best of Both Worlds. That's the same solution.
Yep.
Except they don't arrive at it in a character-driven way. In The Best of Both Worlds, Picard's the one that says, sleep, because he's been in there. He knows what command will work, and the crew react to that. Whereas in Strange New Worlds, it's, well, we've noticed some stellar patterns or something, and we'll just put them to sleep. It seems like it'll work for about 10 years, and then they'll wake up, and then Kirk will have to deal with them. It's fine. That's the problem. I just think that it's not numbering among the better science fiction that's out there, or even just the better fiction. You just watch any prestige thing that deals with contemporary issues in really fascinating ways, and this show is just not doing it. It's too focused on relationship drama, and I'm just not into that.
Yes, totally agree. I think season 1 and season 2 were far and away above where season 3 has landed itself thus far. So it's not necessarily a knock on the show, but this season has been really surprisingly not where I think any of us thought it would be. Do you think it's possibly the strike that happened a couple years ago that put a big delay in the production process? Do you think that may have had some kind of a impact on this?
I'm not sure, because I think they were in production of the season before the strike happened, and then production paused because the strike happened. So they had to have at least some scripts, and they probably had some idea of where they wanted to take the season as well. So I don't think the strikes affected much other than the time frame of what they were hoping to deliver. I don't think that's why it took 2 years. There's other shows that got back on their feet a lot quicker than this did. I think they were just sitting with these episodes in the can for perhaps 8 months to a year and just not bothering to give us a release date, because there's so much else on Paramount Plus that they need to schedule, isn't there?
True.
That Stallone show, we need to put that on at some point. What's it called? Tulsa King? I've not seen it.
Tulsa King. Look. I'm not like a fan of Sylvester Stallone, but I like the guy. I appreciate the mannerisms he brings to a show. So it's not prestige TV, but it's definitely worth putting on the telly and doing something else.
I think he's probably doing that because Arnie's doing a Netflix show. They're always in competition somewhere.
Oh, 100%.
Or maybe Arnie's doing that because Stallone's doing a Paramount show. I don't know. One or the other will be trying to one-up the other.
That's just because Jason Statham is making another working man movie.
Oh, yes. Doing a movie where he plays a innocuous working-class guy who has a past where he beats up a lot of people.
Blue collar, I'm the transporter. No, now I'm the beekeeper. Okay, now I'm just the working man.
The working man was not good. Beekeeper was fun, though. Anyway, back to Star Trek. What did you think of this episode after all that we've said about Season 3?
We have said all that we said about Season 3. I particularly enjoyed this episode. This so far has been the strongest episode of the season, from the action, the pacing, to the plot setup, to the character depictions. Although I have a few comments which we'll get into in a little bit as we discuss it, I felt that this was a strong episode. And for me, this is the first 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10 tribbles that I can give.
I liked this episode as well, although I also feel in the back of my mind that I shouldn't, because it's just such a cynical creation.
It is.
We're moving away from the Strange New Worlds crew by and large. This is a story about Kirk taking his first command, and we're just going to give him most of his future crew. So we're going to try and recreate that TOS vibe as much as possible and set up some of these dynamics and things. Despite that, I enjoyed it. I think Paul Wesley is good at Kirk. I think he keeps getting better the more that he gets to play him. Although I do wish they'd committed to, every time we see him, it's an alternate reality. Never give us the real Kirk, but they backed out of that pretty quickly.
Paul Wesley is definitely doing a real good job as Kirk here.
Playing 20 years older than he should be. Or he is 20 years older than he's playing. Something like that.
Technically, yes. What I find interesting is some folks were really thrilled with his Shatnerisms from A Space Adventure Hour, when he was really leaning into the parody of William Shatner's speaking style. And for me personally, that particular cadence. The pauses, the hesitations, all for dramatic delivery came from William Shatner originally being more of a classically trained William Shakespearean actor for the stage, and he's bringing that to the TV screen. And some of it was also because Shatner would forget his lines. So he would stop, and you could see his brain processing what the next line should be before he actually says it. That was just the nature of TV making back then, and to make it a parody and to bring it to every single episode that Paul Wesley is in would just be so exhausting. And I would not be interested, and I would not be able to take myself out of, oh, he's doing his Shatner impression. Let me gauge how good his impression is. And I'm glad that they're not going in that direction. I'm glad that Paul Wesley has made this conscious decision to just do his own version of Kirk. And Shatner has given him his blessing, said he likes what he's doing. They sat together on a plane, they had the chat, and there's even the tweets out there where William Shatner says, take care of my ship, take care of my crew.
Whoever runs Shatner's Twitter account said that, yes.
Yes, but one way or the other, I am glad that the depiction is a truthful, honest, and authentic one.
Yeah, and that Shatner cadence you were talking about, that was never really the way it was. It's been heavily exaggerated. What
of course
Paul Wesley was actually doing, he was doing an impression of, I think it's Kevin Pollak that popularized that parody of Shatner, and that's the one that dug into pop culture. Whenever the character of Kirk is reduced to that, I get annoyed because it just shows that people don't know what they're talking about.
Agreed.
You have him reduced to this, oh yeah, he was a womanizing, reckless risk taker. No, not quite. He pushed the envelope a little bit, but he didn't thumb his nose at the rules all the time. And in Kirk's opening log entry in this episode, you get him as that character almost. He's like, yeah, I'm really bored and I wish we were taking more risks and I wish I was giving the orders. That's the version of Kirk that people expect. But we're kind of watching him grow out of that and become the professional, skilled captain that he will be in the original series. He was very good at what he did. He's the youngest captain in Starfleet for a reason, because he proved himself.
Time and time again, yeah.
Where no man has gone before, he describes himself as being a stack of books with legs at the academy, because he's very studious. He wanted to learn everything. He wanted to make sure he was ready. And you're getting that with Paul Wesley. He's not playing Shatner, he's playing Kirk. And I think there's an important distinction there.
Exactly.
Just like Chris Pine was doing. And his take on Kirk's very different.
Yeah, Chris Pine was excellent.
His take on Kirk has a very different history. So he is much more hot-headed in things. But especially in Star Trek Beyond, you start to see him mellow into the Kirk that we wanted to see in the first place. The less said about his characterization in Into Darkness, the better, because I don't know who that guy was.
I've got a whole treatise on the Kelvinverse films where if you take all three of the Kelvinverse trilogy as one and you consider it a story just about James Kirk, it becomes a much more palatable, where in the first film you get introduced to this new hot-headed character. The second film is all about him learning his boundaries and understanding that he cannot take the risks just because he thinks they are necessary to take. And then in the third film, you have kind of the close of the chapter on who this man really is. And if you just take it as that, it becomes a much more interesting character examination and dilemma.
In terms of Into Darkness, all I can stomach is the opening 10 minutes. After that, I'm just like, done. Don't need to see any more of this. I'm happy with that short film they did with the volcano. That was good.
Yeah, maybe someone can do a fan cut of where it just starts with that and then it goes to the scene where Spock is telling on Kirk and then cut to the end of the movie.
Yeah, pretty much. That works for me. It's more than I need to see from that movie. But yes, backdoor pilot for TOS. They have said that they want to maybe get a show commissioned that is essentially 5-year mission, year one.
Yes.
Because it's unspecified when we join the crew during the 5-year mission.
I don't like it, Craig.
We all know we're heading there. Whether they'll get it commissioned or not is up in the air, because they're just not spending money on Star Trek at the moment. They don't want to. You've got this on the go and Academy. Well, I imagine they'll be finishing at roughly the same time when you look at production schedules, because they're working on season 4 of this right now and Academy season 2 shooting. So they'll probably just sort of leapfrog each other until they both finish.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if we'll get TOS year one, don't know.
The idea of a backdoor pilot, this episode showcasing Kirk in a command environment, leading his future crew members and colleagues and friends, it felt like exactly that. It felt like the producers and showrunners are proving to the studio execs that, yes, this is the show that we want to make. Here are the characters we want to make the show with. Look how good their chemistry is on screen. Look how good they work together. Look how cool all of our new VFX is and how good the ship looks in action. And it just feels like a proof of concept in real time, just like bringing Pike and Spock to season 2 of Discovery. It was a proof, almost as much to the audience as it is to the studio itself. And I think that ultimately audience appetites for TV shows are kind of waning a little bit as of late. There was this big push for every individual streamer, Paramount, HBO, Netflix, Peacock, you name it, whatever network it is, they have their own app and they're all jockeying for position. They're all trying to say, we have the best show, come subscribe to our service for another $15 a month. So there's space for this show to be done, but it's a reboot, yet another reboot. And if they are just continuing the series, that's a little bit more palatable for the studio to accept. Okay, Strange New Worlds is now going to morph into year 1, whatever that looks like. The branding will all stay the same. We have all the assets. So you're not spinning up a brand new revenue stream. We already have it in place. We're just scrubbing some of the names and putting some new names in their places.
Yeah, and you can bring back maybe some of the characters that will naturally shuffle off and go do other things because they weren't in the original series. Mm-hmm. It's all something that could happen. But yeah, they already have the bridge set. I mean, the Farragut bridge set is just the Enterprise bridge set. There was no difference. They didn't even bother to do some kind of token change to show that they have different bridges. You would at least get that in previous Star Trek stuff, like the Excelsior bridge. That was doing a lot of heavy lifting in TNG, wasn't it? It was everything. It was alien bridges. It was other Federation starship bridges. It was everything. So
I think they rotated it a little bit because it looked like the turbo lift was in a different position than it is on the Enterprise.
Well, that's something, I guess.
Yeah, just copied the homework and changed a couple answers.
And in terms of likening it to other Star Trek episodes, a note I took was it's reminiscent of the Doomsday Machine, almost from the perspective of the Constellation. You even have the mention of, let's go stand on this planet and explore it. That's exactly what happens in the Doomsday Machine. Obviously, you have the big destructive thing that is attacking things and destroying planets and so on. You have a bit of the finale of season 1 of Lower Decks with the Packleads with their patchwork ships.
Yep.
Stealing ships and so on. And I had a bit of Star Trek Beyond as well. This unknown thing that they have to fight and they're not equipped to deal with.
Ah, yes. And then the reveal being, oh.
Yes. The reveal being what it was. So again, it's another patchwork of different ideas that they've already done, but they aren't really doing anything with them.
Right. Now, my question for you, Craig, we know in canon that Kirk's big command moment on the Farragut was actually dealing with the vampire cloud.
Yeah, which should be a few years ago in this timeline, I think.
I would have to look up the star dates and everything, but I was surprised that they did not go down that route for this, because I think it would have been really interesting to see. As soon as the opening log plays and Kirk mentions about a landing party, I was like, oh my God, we're going to do the vampire cloud. We get to see this. And I thought this was going to be it is a massive thing, but I thought this was going to move into a much darker direction. And based on, we had the zombies, and then we had the space adventure hour, and then through the lens of time with the temple, I thought, oh, they're really leaning into this horror explorative kind of a thing that they're doing. We get a different episode out of it. Why do you think they would change this command moment for Kirk?
I honestly think it's maybe that they just didn't know that canon says this. And I keep saying it, this is a new timeline. They've established that Khan didn't rise to power in 1996, and he's a child in the mid-21st century, so therefore, different timeline, so it doesn't have to play out the same way. But if they're telling us that this is X amount of years before the original series, then it seems to follow that they will adhere to some level of canon consistency. I mean, they've already breached that. Kirk says in The Menagerie that he only met Pike once or twice or something. He says he barely knows the guy. But in this show, they've had several conversations. And I'm okay with that because we don't want to hamstring these actors from interacting on screen in what could be good scenes because of one line of dialogue spoken nearly 60 years ago.
Exactly.
I think that's short-sighted, but some of the big stuff should potentially be adhered to. So I just wonder if they don't know. They never bothered to look up Kirk's history. And we're just going to decide that this is his history now, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. But I think the vampire cloud thing is already supposed to have happened.
Yeah, that was episode Obsession.
Yes.
In universe, that takes place in 2268.
Well, no, the Obsession episode is the sequel, isn't it? So that's the second time he encounters it.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So when did he first encounter it? This is not what we're here to discuss.
No. But basically, we have a riff on all these episodes and you're not quite doing anything with them. Again, it's one of these things where you can imagine these conversations that they have in the original series. So they encounter the Doomsday Machine and it's like, what the hell is this? We've never seen anything like it. Well, now it's like, oh, this is a bit like that time that we first worked together, Spock. Remember when there was something else killing planets? Might it be that? No, this is different.
This is different. Very different. I definitely clock the Doomsday Machine as being a big influence on this episode, in part because you have this giant alien ship that has a mouth that opens. Okay.
It's got a big face. It's very strange.
Yeah, it was really odd to look at. I'll tell you what, during the opening log sequence, before it goes to the opening credits and Kirk looks to the screen and something is blocking our communications and he goes, oh, it's that. I got excited. I was like, are they going to make a Borg reference?
Also, Kirk's captain's a Vulcan. Isn't Spock the first Vulcan in Starfleet?
Technically, yes, but again, new timeline.
Yeah.
They've played with that concept for years. I believe in TOS it said he's the first half human, half Vulcan. He's the first Vulcan in Starfleet. And then even in TOS, there are shots of Vulcans just running around. I think they try to get around it by saying, well, they're part of the Vulcan science fleet, or they're just partners and working in tandem. But it's pretty unclear throughout most of TOS whether he actually is or is not, because again, they played fast and loose with the rules.
Yeah, plus you see the Vulcan Admiral in the second season during the trial.
Yep.
And I think there was maybe a Vulcan captain in Discovery at some point before they went to the future.
I think you're right, yeah.
These things that they're maybe not paying lip service to, it doesn't really bother me. I think it's just worth remarking on that they're supposedly setting us up for this show that we've already seen, but we're definitely in a new timeline. I'm just going to keep saying it until everybody agrees with me, because they've said it. They just haven't made a big deal out of it. At no point has anybody come out and said, this is a new timeline. We are going to blaze our own trail, because I guess they're frightened of upsetting people that might want to adhere to the prime timeline. Well, that's the reason the Kelvin timeline exists, right? Because they want us to watch it and not feel guilty that it's erased all of our previous Star Trek.
Yeah.
Again, fine. I'm okay with the multiverse and so on. And I'm okay with this being a new timeline. I would actually prefer it because it means they can take bigger swings, in theory, except they aren't.
Yeah, they're just trying to get everything to add up to where they want things to land for the original series to take over.
Yeah. Also in my notes is it's all Enterprise crew that help Kirk. There is a couple of Farragut crew members sitting around, but they don't do anything other than one that's like, yeah, he's been in charge before, but not like this. Really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, I also noticed that Kirk leaves the bridge at one point and he's clearly going through it. And Chapel is basically saying, I have the medical clearance to give him an examination and remove him from command if that's what we need to do.
Also reminiscent of the Doomsday Machine.
Oh, good point. And then the one Farragut crew member sits up and it's like, he's had the comm before, but nothing like this. This is insane. Fair, it is pretty insane. It's a pretty wild thing to have to go through in one of your first times in command of the ship. But yeah, I was a little surprised that character didn't have more to do. I would have hoped to see, I don't know, maybe it could have been Ensign Garavik to keep to the timeline. There was a Captain Garavik who was in command of the Farragut when the vampire cloud took over and killed everybody, including Captain Garavik. There are plenty of opportunities that Strange New Worlds has to make certain connections that they don't take, that sometimes take viewers like us by surprise because of how easy to us it seems to be. But then again, they're trying to tell a very specific story. So I understand that we're not necessarily going to get Ensign Garavik for a total of 4 minutes of screen time. I get it.
Well, I actually thought this might have been a place that they would have introduced someone like Sulu or Gary Mitchell. They're just on the Farragut with Kirk and establish that maybe he brings them with him when he takes command of the Enterprise.
Yes. We've also been jokingly discussing which character from the original series are they going to introduce this season, and Sulu's high on the list.
Yeah, this would have been a place to do it because they're just out there and they're doing another job on another ship and we might not see them for a while, but we know that they already work with Kirk. I probably would have went with Gary Mitchell because it would have been good to have his friend stand up for him.
Oh, yeah.
When the Enterprise crew are immediately like, so mutiny then. Let's get rid of him.
Straight to mutiny.
He's had a bit of a setback. He's never done this before. This is a situation that none of us would really rise to the occasion with, but let's get rid of him. What's your alternative? Who's going to take command?
Obviously, Nurse Chapel.
Why not? She does whatever. Spock doesn't have any command experience at this point. He's never been in the big chair.
No, it's kind of the same as Kirk at this point. He's had away missions. He's been in charge of the science team, for example, but nothing specific to this is a calamitous event and I need to save the day.
Yeah, so it's a trial by fire for Kirk, which they're going to do because it's going to be dramatic, isn't it? They're not going to be like, he's just in command of the Farragut now because his captain's away or whatever, and he handles it brilliantly. It's always got to be a learning experience, a really big test of this character's mettle in crisis situations, which is fine. I think that's fine. And it's a bit reminiscent of Picard's origin story, isn't it? Because he mentions that his captain was killed and he had to step up on the Stargazer.
Yeah.
And it's not quite that his captain is killed. They don't want to quite go down that route. Instead, we'll have barely any lines of dialogue. Captain just be hastily written off so that Kirk can take control. But I like the idea of he thinks he knows the answers, and then once he's actually in the situation, realizes he doesn't. I wonder if that's maybe not necessarily calling out the fans as such, but I know there's a lot of people, myself included, saying, here's better ways of making this show. And it's almost like saying, well, you try writing this show then. And I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, I will, okay.
Yeah, you're onto something there. That's where we get the title of the episode, the Sehlat Who Ate Its Tail. I thought that particular scene when Spock comes into Kirk's quarters there, or the galley, or I forget exactly where it is, the ready room maybe.
I think it's the ready room, yeah.
Kirk is there fixing the 3D chessboard and thinking about his game with Captain Burrell, where he says it was her turn, and if only I could figure out what she would have done in this situation. And he's clearly going through it. And Spock, being non-emotional, of course, he steps into the room. He's the best equipped to deal with a highly emotional Kirk right now. And he steps into the room, kind of talks him down, and Kirk gives the adage of something his mom used to say. Oh, you're like a dog chasing a car, except you won't know what to do with it once you catch it. That's exactly right. That's exactly the situation that they find themselves in. And Spock responds with, we have the same story on Vulcan. What does the Sehlat do when it finally catches its tail? Nothing. It doesn't know. It didn't think this far ahead. All it knows is that instinctually, we want to run at the problem and solve the problem. But you can't just run at it. And that's what Kirk has been doing up to this point. So I thought the way Spock talked him down in that moment, saying, you've trusted your instincts this far, keep trusting them. That was a good moment. For me personally, that particular scene was quite nice. I thought it showed Kirk's vulnerability. It showed that he does not know everything. And yes, he's cocky and full of bravado, but in that moment, he's understanding that you can't just be cocky and full of bravado, and you don't have all the answers, and you need to rely on others. And you see that immediately when he comes back to the bridge. And he says, these are our problems. Now we need to find the solutions. Tell me what we do know. Don't tell me what we don't know or what happened. We already know all that. Tell me what we do know about the scavengers. And then they set about to rectifying the situation they find themselves in. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really good scene from a dialogue standpoint, from a character standpoint, and sets up the dynamic duo.
And the arrogance that Kirk exhibits up to that point where he just assumes the ship's crippled, but we'll get it done. It'll be fine. We'll take all the risks. It'll be fine. We'll push the ship beyond its capabilities and we'll succeed, because I believe that just throwing the rulebook out and making the difficult choices and the risky choices is going to pay off. That's the moment he finally sits in the chair. He's reluctant up until that point, and then when it's like, yeah, we got the warp drive working, we're on our way, we're going to win this, he sits down and then it's immediately a failure. The ship is crippled. As soon as he gets comfortable in the chair, he is then presented with something that renders him uncomfortable in the chair. So I like that he gets a kick in his complacency in that way. No, I can't disrespect the way the universe works. I have to understand what the limitations are and work within them. And that's what Kirk was always very good at doing. He would push it, but he knows how far he can push it. He knows the Enterprise inside out. He probably knows the Enterprise as well as Scotty does in a lot of ways in terms of the capabilities, and he'll push it to a point, but he'll back down when he knows that it's going to be too much to deal with. It's a good lesson for Kirk. And I think it does descend into a little bit of that introspective, overly emotional CW dialogue a little bit in places. Although I did like the Kirk-Spock dynamic. I think Ethan Peck and Paul Wesley have a good back and forth there. They work really well together. And if this is a backdoor pilot, yeah, I could stand to see a bit more of this. I like the way that they work.
Yeah, like we said, this is the producers proving to all of us that the TOS reboot will work.
Yeah, and the Scotty and Kirk dynamic works really well as well.
Let's talk a little bit about Scotty and Kirk, because I have some things to say.
I like Scotty. I think Martin Quinn's great in the role. Proper Scottish actor playing the role for the first time officially, so that's great. And I think they're playing him a little bit like Chekhov in this show, as in he's quirky and foreign and says weird stuff. He references John Logie Baird, famous Scottish inventor. That's the kind of stuff Chekhov would do, referencing famous Russians, and everyone would look at him as like, who the hell is that? I think they're doing that. He's a young guy, he's on the crew, he's enthusiastic, he's a bit quirky, and so he's kind of the Chekhov of Strange New Worlds, which I think is fitting for Scotty at this point in his career, his development.
I think so. Yeah, Martin Quinn's doing really well in the role, and I like this young Scotty. I didn't like Scotty's energy in this particular episode. Reluctant, almost standoffish in a way. In the grand scheme of things, he doesn't really know Kirk. They're not friends yet. But first, there's a little bit of a juxtaposition happening here, because in the original series, Mr. Scott is older than James Kirk, and here he's younger, clearly younger. I was also surprised when they introduced the character and he came across as so young. I think if they had stuck to having an older actor in that position of Mr. Scott, it would have played differently for me in this particular scene, because it almost feels like Scott is telling Kirk kind of the business as an engineer. This is what we're capable of. This is what we can do. You cannot push the engines any harder. We will blow up. Do not do this. Kirk says do it anyway. And young engineer Scotty has no choice but to obey the command. And in any situation, I'm sure he would no matter what. But if it were an older version of Mr. Scott, would Kirk have listened? And in the original series, Kirk knew what the limitations were, so he wasn't afraid to push Scott. But when Scott finally did push back, Kirk would say, okay, well, find a way and get it done. But in this episode, Kirk was like, no, you listen to me. I know what we can do. I know better than you. And Scott's pushback to that was reasonable, in my opinion. There's nothing wrong with what he did, but that's just how I feel about the interaction of the scene. And I think if maybe they had aged the character up a little bit for the show, it would have played off a little bit better than how it actually sounds, which is, okay, you've got cocky Kirk over here full of bravado, and now you've got cocky Scotty over here telling cocky Kirk, don't do this, and they're just kind of bantering at each other. That was the only thing that made me feel off.
I liked it because there was some actual conflict there. It was resolved by the end when they were all on the same page. But you actually had, in Strange New Worlds, two characters having a strong disagreement about something, which is just something we don't see. Usually Pike's too busy using everyone's first name and being all pally with them. He doesn't really challenge his crew in the same way. He's very encouraging, which is good for a leader. But as I've always said, we haven't seen Pike be the captain in that way. And you actually see Kirk do that here. He's like, I've heard your suggestions, now do what I said. And as subordinate, even if you think it's a stupid idea, you have to do what the boss says, even after you've outlined your concerns. They've said, I heard you, but do it anyway. And effectively, you get Scotty turning up later on going, see, I told you, now we're crippled. I hope you're happy. Scotty as well, he's still dealing with the loss of his ship and crew, and he's seeing history repeat itself here, potentially. He's seeing Kirk lead them down the same path that will lead to destruction. So that's really informing his attitude in this moment. He thinks Kirk's going to get him killed, and he's going to be there when another ship goes down and another crew dies. You get that when Kirk says, I'm not giving up on the Enterprise, I'm not giving up on us. Everyone's going to make it home from this. And he says, thank you, I really needed to hear that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Again, it's an actual conflict that is resolved and they're bonded by this crisis situation. But I liked that there was just a little bit of animosity in there, because I really hate this notion of Kirk turns up and everybody loves him and he loves everybody. It's just, no, I think this is a stupid idea. You outrank me, but I think it's a stupid idea. And Scotty just seems like the type that doesn't care about protocol. He's always very vocal with his opinions, which is fine on the Enterprise because nobody gets told off for anything over there.
Oh, seriously.
But Kirk is a bit of a hard ass when it comes to being a captain. You see that in the original series all the time. If someone speaks out of line, he will call them out in front of everybody. And he does a bit of that here. He's kind of wrong to, but once he gains more confidence and experience, he will be the captain that says, we're not having this discussion right now. Or what's one of the famous lines in the original series? It's, I'll bear that in mind when this becomes a democracy. stuff like that.
Ah, yes.
It was good on that score. I really liked that they were not on the same page for much of the episode.
Yeah, thinking about it from that perspective, you're right. It does show a different quality of the characters. And to your point, not everybody gets along from the get-go. Sometimes there's conflict, sometimes there's little things, ideas and philosophies that run counter to meeting someone, having to work with someone, especially in a crisis situation where you have no idea who this person is, and now all of a sudden you have to work together to get out alive. My idea is X. My idea is Y.
And unfortunately, the person in charge has no idea what they're doing, but they're still in charge.
Yeah. You talk about Kirk's confidence level, and maybe he shouldn't call them out right then and there. And part of me thinks at the same time, there is no mechanism to just tell someone nicely, okay, I heard you. We have to get through this. Sometimes if someone like Scotty just keeps pushing back, you got to clamp it down and deal with it later and just say, well, this is a decision. I heard your suggestions. Now we need real options. Okay, I heard your options. I don't like any of them. So I'm going to step away and think about it for a minute, which is also kind of valid. Yes, the clock is running short, but stepping away and thinking about it, I do think sometimes in Star Trek, the era of competence porn that the Next Generation gave us, where decisions were immediately made and they were the best decision that could ever have been made in that moment. And then everybody snaps to and everybody gets it done to the best of their ability. But the real world doesn't work like that. And now, as an adult, we realize when we go to work that the workplace is not like the Starship Enterprise, and no one is making even close to a good decision. That, of course, forces us to think very differently, and it forces us to think selfishly too. So I like seeing some real world conflict and hearing you talk about how it's kind of necessary to have that moment, and of course it gets resolved. That's also good because it shows people that yes, you can have differences, you can take the moment, and then you can move on from it.
And you have Scotty learning how to work with others, rely on others as well. That's something that's brought up in the holodeck episode where Una tells him, you don't have to do everything alone. You can ask for help. And now he's in this situation where he has to rely on Kirk to keep him alive. And it's like, this guy's going to get me killed. I'm going to be on another ship that's going down. This is horrible. It's all very raw for Scotty, I think. So it makes sense that he would behave this way. And he's probably not all that familiar with crisis situations as well. I mean, he's been in a few since the season 2 finale, I guess, on the Enterprise. That ship attracts trouble. So he's going to get used to it, I guess, but he's still young and impulsive and doesn't quite know how to express himself. I think that's really important. And it's also a semi-brave choice to have Kirk not be the one who's immediately brilliant at the job of being captain.
They have to take time to show who this Kirk is. And if they were to write in Kirk immediately being the hero of the day and swooping in with the cavalry to rescue the Enterprise at the last minute, if everything went perfect, I feel that would have really undercut the episode.
Oh, it would have. But they could have had the problems be situational. It's not Kirk's orders that are wrong. It's just something happens that nobody could have predicted.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
They attack in a different way. You could have had that. And then he keeps reacting to this ever-changing situation, but every choice he makes is the right one in that moment. But I like that he got to be wrong. And it was just funny when, okay, here are 2 options. And Kirk says, I choose neither, and then wanders off. And everyone's like, what do we do with that?
Well, mutiny, Craig.
Yeah, we need to certify him as medically unfit, and then Chapel's in charge because she knows what she's doing, I guess.
Shout out to Nurse Chapel, archaeologist, puzzle solver, diplomat. What else has she done so far this season? Not even talking about last season. Special operative, like all this stuff.
I guess it would have been Spock. He would have been the ranking officer that would have been in charge, but he would have been, okay, let's get back to Federation space, or let's get to the subspace relay and tell them that a planet's been killed. Cool. That's useful. And then you get the miracle plan of, okay, we'll make ourselves look like an appetizing meal for this scavenger ship, and then we'll disable it and help the Enterprise get out, all that. I think it comes together a little bit too neatly. Kirk comes out with his swagger and he's like, here's what we're going to do. I now understand exactly what we need to do. It kind of feels like, what are your ideas? And then he should take the ideas rather than he just knows.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty easily wrapped up solution that they come about with. And of course, thankfully, everything works according to plan, probably better than what they had anticipated, as it results in the scavenger ship being disabled enough to get the Enterprise out. So that was cool. I didn't mind it so much. And by that point in the episode, I was definitely kind of feeling like, let's get on with it. While I thought the pacing was really good overall, that particular sequence of events where they were finally solving the problems, running the phone line, for example, all that in that time frame. I was like, this should have happened 10 minutes ago. And then they could have gone about the business of solving the problem and saving the day. But other things happened.
And it might have been better if Kirk had come out and said, I'm open to suggestions. And then they had a proper discussion about it where everyone was throwing ideas and then they eventually arrive at a plan because Kirk takes on the expertise of everyone around him and forms a plan using all the pieces that surround him. Because that's what he would do as a captain. He would understand everybody's skills and put them together and then push them in a direction that would make them win, which is not quite what he does here. He already has the plan and it's, Scotty, you're going to do this. Uhura, you're going to fly the ship for some reason because there's no one else around. So by default, you're at the helm. She was at the helm once in the original series.
Yeah, they're definitely giving her a lot more. And Spock actually makes a comment in this episode. Was it Chapel who asked, is this her first time at the helm? And Spock says, second, including this time.
Including the time earlier.
Oh. That was a fun moment. And of course, Spock giving that twice, including this time. His deadpan delivery is perfect comedy.
Yeah. And then the stuff on the Enterprise, I feel like a lot of it was busy work. They were running around trying to deal with the situation. And the whole phone line thing, I was just thinking, are those wall panels they used to communicate not wired? It feels like they should be.
I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, the wall panels, why wouldn't they be hardwired? That blows my mind. That right there showed a little bit of a, I don't want to say misunderstanding or missed continuity from TOS, but in TOS, those wall panels were made great use of, the intercom system. And to not have that portrayed here, I thought was a big miss.
Yeah, you had it in Enterprise as well in the second season opener when they're captured by the Suliban. You have Trip managing to sort of hack into the wired network of doorbells so they can all talk to each other in their quarters. There are just certain things that wireless is fine, but you will always need some kind of wired connection for stability, for reliability, and it just feels like that would be something they would never get rid of.
Yeah, the writers not really understanding that and having this particular plot point, as fun and as cutesy as it is to pull out all these fun rotary phones and install them on the Enterprise, for the writers to misunderstand the purpose behind the communications panels, it shows a little bit of their youth. You and I, of course, we're older than I think the writers are at this point, and we kind of get why wired infrastructure exists. And honestly, you don't even have to be necessarily older. We're in our 30s, early 40s here, and you just have to work in IT to understand the benefits of a wired infrastructure. It makes no sense to rely on everything being wireless all the time, especially your internal communications. That's a big miss. So this just speaks to a lot of those crazy decisions that Starfleet makes to make it make sense in universe. Why would Starfleet say, oh, let's create everything wireless?
Yeah, and you have the Atari joysticks and things used to fire the maneuvering thrusters.
Yeah.
They wanted to do a fun retro thing, and they get to do their fun retro thing, fine. It's one of those things that might seem cool in the moment, but once you unpack it even a little bit, this is dumb. It's really dumb.
Yeah. And that sequence could have been cool had they spent time really setting it up, but it did sort of feel like, okay, Erica, save the day. Yes, I will do this. Okay, here's what we're going to do. And then cut to 5 minutes later, and you have these retro joysticks that they're using. That scene could have been really cool, and we definitely could have had a real hot Apollo 13 moment where Erica is walking number one, Una, through firing the joystick. She talks about it several times where we can wind up a scorch mark on the inside of their hull. So you could have set it up for a real intense, okay, 3 degrees, okay, 5 degrees, azimuth north, this, that, whatever. And that could have been really cool. But instead, it's played for laughs, it's played for action, and it's played to end the episode in a timely fashion.
And it's to make sure that the Enterprise crew aren't totally useless while Kirk's off trying to figure out how to save them.
Yes.
That's where a bit of the Star Trek Beyond connection came in as well. The boarding parties and stuff sticking through the hull. It was very reminiscent of that.
Thought of that as well.
And obviously they turn out to be human.
Yeah.
Which, weirdly, I saw coming, actually.
I did too.
It's not that anything telegraphs it particularly, and I'm just thinking, I bet these guys are going to be humans. I just feel like that's going to be the big lesson here, or the big twist reveal. And it's one of those things, they have to explain it heavily after they reveal it. How can humans be out here in a ship this big? And it's like, well, after the Third World War, they sent off a bunch of people in a colony ship or whatever, and this is them now. They've become corrupted and evil and scavengers, and they're these legendary devourers that are out there.
Yes, I wrote in my notes here, through most of the episode, especially when they discover this ship in the first place, the Klingons call it Chaka, the Annihilator. And then they have the Destroyer of Worlds, it's called at one point. Anyway, it's supposed to be an undefeatable destroyer. And it opens its mouth, and 3 photon torpedoes later, it's in pieces. Okay, I understand it's a big bad, it's scary, but to have it be completely decimated and destroyed within a matter of moments, because of course, our heroes' ingenuity and teamwork and friendship and trust save the day, right? So that is the ultimate moral of the story. But to make it make sense, it kind of flew in the face of everything that we're told.
Yeah, it was the Klingon ship's warp core they aimed at to blow it up from the inside. At least that's established. We have a Klingon ship in here that's partially disassembled. We'll blow it up from the inside fine. The reveal, it both did and didn't work for me. I think that the conversation it led to was a good one. Kirk wondering about where he sits morally on this, because he was cheering at the fact that he beat the bad guy, he destroyed the bad guy, he killed this thing that was trying to kill them, and then suddenly he realizes, oh God, that's 7,000 human beings I killed.
Yes.
Who aren't really human anymore. They're corrupted beyond the point of recognition. But that's the problem. They're not really an antagonist that you can latch onto, because they have no personality. None of them speak, none of them say anything, none of them interact with the crew in any meaningful way. So it is just, oh, we should feel bad because we killed a bunch of humans that were supposed to be the best of us, and they're corrupted and so on.
Yeah. I thought about it a little bit after watching the episode, because it's a really compelling plot point. This generation ship launched from Earth sometime after the Third World War, where the crew was handpicked from survivors from the planet, from the wreckage of the space race, and whatever was left over, we cobbled together this generation ship, we threw it out there, and this is what you get. It becomes this big destroyer, leeching off of other worlds, leeching off of other ships. So this, of course, gets your imagination going. This would have made a great plot for a Strange New Worlds movie, in my opinion. It could have all gone the exact same way as the episode, but stretch it out and also give us the perspective from the villain. We could have seen all the terrible things that the descendants of the Generation crew had to go through to stay alive. You look at those big bodysuits that they're wearing, they're cobbled together, they're patched over, there's bolts sticking out of it, there's these little patchwork edges and clearly different materials welded onto the original suits to make them last as long as they possibly could. And if there's 7,000 of them at this point that we meet them, what sort of terrible things must have happened in their culture? What sort of culture do they have? What sort of connection to Earth did they have at this point? Why did they make no attempt to go back to it? So there's a lot of questions that we will never have answered, because Kirk made the decision to blow it up. Although whether he knew it was going to blow it up, or just disable it, I think is the big juxtaposition between destruction and just disablement. I think there could have been something really fun to explore there, and it really gets your imagination working. And if you've read any other science fiction that's dealt with long-term space travel or generation ships with that idea in mind, one of the big things that they even talk about today that they study is the long-term effects of space travel and psychosis, and what happens to people when they are in confined spaces for such long periods of time with no opportunity to go outside. That's what the holodeck episode was all about.
Yeah, they were piloting it for that reason.
Yeah.
We're probably going to have ships that are out there for 5 years or more, and they're going to need something to do.
Yeah. So there's a lot that they could have done with this particular plot line that I personally would have loved to have seen from a science fiction standpoint.
Yeah. And it reminded me a bit of the Reavers in Firefly, although they don't reveal what the origin of them is till the movie, Serenity.
Right.
And in that, they were driven mad, and then they do this, and they're out there at the dark edges of the verse, as they call it, and picking people off.
Right. That was because of some sort of experiment gone wrong, right?
That's right, yeah. But it's a similar enough idea. It's our dark side, it's our corruption, and how do we deal with that? And you've seen other examples of human settlements out there that they didn't know existed in Discovery Season 2, when they jump to that planet that has all those humans on it that were saved after the Third World War by the Red Angel. And they made a peaceful, benevolent society. And then you have these guys that have been corrupted and gone insane or whatever. There's a great idea in there, which is why I think that they shouldn't have gone with their human reveal, because there's just no time to explore it.
Yeah, that's one of the big losses of this episode, in my opinion. I mark that as a con. We don't get to explore this concept enough. Had we paced it a little differently, maybe we spent a little less time running cable all over the Enterprise, we could have gotten to understand who these villains were. That final conversation at the very end where Pike and Kirk have that closing wrap-up conversation, I thought it was brilliant, by the way. That's the Star Trek I'm always here for. We are not so different from our enemies. This would have landed, I think, twice as hard had we had the perspective of these scavengers.
Well, again, Star Trek Beyond, you do get some time to understand where Idris Elba's character's coming from. Not a lot, but you get some.
Right.
You get the idea of the Federation was formed and he's a soldier and doesn't like this new peaceful era that he's in. And they gave him a ship and then, from his perspective, abandoned him.
Yeah.
And that's why he is doing what he's doing. But there's that great shot at the end of Beyond that shows that they finally closed the file on the crew, which shows that they never actually gave up on them. They just didn't know what happened to them. And it's just this idea of, you could have came back. We'd have had you back as long as you're not going to behave like this.
Yeah.
But since they have no voice, it's very difficult. But you do get Kirk wanting to save them. He's like, can we beam the survivors aboard? And it's like, no, we'll never get a lock. It's too much debris or whatever. Transporters won't work for some reason.
Yeah, that felt a little ham-fisted in my opinion.
You can see them. You can get one of them. You can beam up some junk with them.
Yeah, you can zoom in. This is another thing I gotta say, Craig, with Spock saying sense ors every chance he possibly can. They couldn't zoom in the sense ors even a little tighter for the transporter beam.
But like you say, the conversation was very good. I like the hard lesson Kirk has about when you're in command, you will make decisions that you regret and you have to live with them. It's just the way it is. And Pike's coming to him from that experience because he learned that same lesson. He mentions when April made him first officer, and that was something he learned the hard way, just like Kirk did. And this whole, what makes us any better than them? It's because you feel like this, because we're having this conversation. That means that we are better than them. We're not going to go down that route. But it's this idea of, how are you going to perform when you're tested like that? They could have had a whole show about that with Voyager, couldn't they?
Yeah.
What does all this isolation do to us? Turns out we're mostly fine, and our ship is in pristine condition because we're using stock footage every week, so we can't kind of ding it up. But you can see Voyager heading down that route in some ways, patching itself together with technology. Eventually, everyone goes nuts.
Yeah, I know a lot of people would like to see that show happen, still to this day.
I mean, I think it wouldn't have worked. I think people would hate it for different reasons.
Oh, definitely.
But it's an idea that they could have ran with. And it's just a wasted opportunity here because there is an opportunity to explore these humans and what became of them. But it's just thrown in at the last minute and it's a bit iffy. That's why the Doomsday Machine works so well. Because this is just an unmanned weapon that belonged to some ancient culture. And it's rampaging. And we just have to stop it. We don't have to understand it. We can't reason with it. We just have to turn it off.
Yeah, the generational ship being portrayed as a monster that then just becomes, oh, it's just a starship that has a bunch of pieces added onto it over the years. It took away from what the story could have been. I'm not going to say should have been, but it took away the monster of the week motif. And it gave us this conversation that we're having right now, which is, let's talk about who the villain is. Oh, it's us. It was us all along. It was humans all along. We're always the bad guy. I get it. I understand that. Let's talk about why. How did we get from these heroic astronauts to corrupt scavengers just blowing up planets for material and resources?
And the story should have been much more simple than it was. If you want to tell the story of Kirk's first time in the chair, protecting his crew, saving the Enterprise, you don't really need a complex twist for your villain to make that happen.
That's true. We had a vampire cloud ready in the chamber. We could have just spun that script up.
Dealing with some kind of force of nature. I don't know, maybe the Enterprise is trapped inside an anomaly of some kind that they have to get them out of. Could be anything.
Could be anything.
Could even be some kind of more simple enemy ship, an enemy ship they can understand.
Yeah. But all this to say, I stand strong on my analysis. I'm saying 8.5 out of 10 on this episode. I really liked it. We didn't have any kissy scenes this episode.
We had some knowing glances, though, between Spock and La'an before she disappears.
We had a knowing glance. No, I'm sorry. We had two knowing glances. We had one knowing glance when La'an first came on the Farragut Bridge and locked eyes with James. And then we had the other one where La'an beams away and Spock is staring intently at the beam out. And even after she leaves, he's still staring at the empty space. All right, I thought you guys said this was going to be casual.
It's funny how they beam into a random corridor on the Farragut instead of the bridge or engineering.
Yeah, what's up with that?
We need to get to the bridge. Well, you were just in a transporter room. You know where the bridge is. You could have just went there.
Yeah, they could have beamed to the Farragut's transporter room for all we know.
But they just got into a corridor.
Even if you think about it from a set design perspective, they wouldn't have had to change anything. Okay, we're going to beam to the Farragut's transporter room next. Beam out, everything stays exactly the same. Beam in.
Or you have the same set, but you ding it up a bit.
Yeah, put the door on the other side.
I was reminded of, when you just said it there, in Discovery, when they first went to the Mirror Universe, when they're beaming aboard the ISS Shenzhou, you see the transport room, then they replace the set, but it's done in a continuous shot. That was really cool.
Yeah, something like that. That would have been cool to see.
You could have done similar here with the pristine transporter room of the Enterprise and the banged up transporter room on the Farragut.
Yep.
Or just beam aboard and get on the bridge immediately.
Just get to the bridge. Pelia, I have in my notes here, finally gets some screen time. I like seeing her living quarters because, of course, even though she's been alive for 5,000 years, her favorite time to live in was apparently the 20th century.
Yeah. She's a hoarder that's had 5,000 years to accumulate a lot of crap.
Specifically crap from the 1980s.
Mbenga saying, "This is exactly what I expected of our quarters," actually. It was a good line. Mbenga's in this episode for some reason. He's not doing any medical stuff.
At least he's not being traumatized.
That's true. But it seems like there's quite a lot of people in sickbay that need his help. They've got 190 odd other crew members that could be running cables.
Yeah, didn't he have a really intensive brain surgery to manage?
Yeah.
I guess he did okay with it.
I guess so. I wrapped up this brain surgery in record time now. We can install some phones. What doctors can do. Classic Star Trek problem, though. We've got a crew of 200 and there's only 6 people that can do anything.
Yeah.
That's why you have the captain down there repelling boarding parties instead of being on the bridge.
Where's the security team? La'an.
La'an is the security team.
Yeah, seems like it. This goes into the typical discussion of why does the captain do everything? He's on every away mission. He's on every briefing. He's constantly in the room doing the thing. Whereas it should have been the first officer repelling the boarding party. I don't really think about it. Why would Pike be going? But hey, captain's prerogative.
It was a TNG thing specifically, wasn't it? Where Picard stayed in the chair and Riker did everything.
Yeah. Other things in my notes that I really liked here, Craig, when we get into the Enterprise galley, I immediately thought of First Contact when the Borg stalks Picard into 10 forward.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good scene. I thought it was good tension building. I thought it was good set design where you have the chandelier breaks over the bar and they're like, oh, hey, here's this nice whiskey. And then, oh, cool, perfect. Here's our firebomb. It was a good scene. There was good action, good tension in this episode.
Where was Battelle? Is she on the ship all the time or not?
Great question, Craig. Where are half of our characters half of the time?
And this is a good situation where a spare captain would come in handy. You've got Pike doing his commando stuff. Battelle could be on the bridge, managing it from there. Una's running cables. That's what she's up to. So it could be a good opportunity for Battelle to do something. We get to see a bit of her in command. We've never seen it.
Actually, now that I think about it, you're right. The finale of season 2 is when we get Captain Battelle in a command position. But up until that point and afterwards, she's mostly been just kind of a character crutch for Pike. So yeah, it would have been good if they were including Battelle as part of the Strange New Worlds cast, not just a guest actor on behalf of Pike. It would have been cool. And also, maybe could have been an opportunity to showcase some of that Gorn-human hybrid stuff that was going on in helping repel this boarding party. I know you and I had talked about it in the last episode. Is she now suddenly super strong? What defines the characteristics of this evolution that she's supposedly going through, quote unquote? I'm using air quotes.
You could have her hunting instinct kick in while she goes and hunts boarding party. I'm not saying they should do all of this or maybe even any of this, but I'm just saying there's resources they have at their disposal that they're just refusing to use. We have had it implied that Battelle is just on the Enterprise until they find her a new ship or she makes a decision.
Right.
She's just there all the time. She was in the previous episode. Did they drop her off at Starbase 1 and then pick her up every once in a while? We don't know. It's just like Pelia is here every episode but doesn't want to attend the briefings or whatever.
Right. At least that's written into the dialogue. Where's Pelia? Oh.
The Jet Reno problem. She's never around until she is. And we don't know where she is the rest of the time.
Yeah, we could fan cast and rewrite the episodes all day long. This isn't to say the decisions that they're making are clearly based on, okay, these are the characters that we're going to be working with today. This is the episode and this is the story that we want to tell. So it's not something that I'm taking points away from. I think in the sake of the conversation as fans, of course, we're always going to be asking these questions. To this day, we still ask questions about why did Picard do this? Why did Riker do that?
Yeah, and I think it's a problem that we have in Strange New Worlds. Characters just disappear for long periods of time. Una wasn't in it much for a while.
Sure.
Particularly in season 1, she'd be missing for even entire episodes, and she just wouldn't be there, and she's supposed to be one of our main characters.
Yeah.
You do have Batel hanging around. Well, not all the time. She isn't in the holodeck episode either, but she should be there. They could even mention, she's trapped in my quarters or something like that. Can't get to it.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to handwave some of this stuff if you really want to, but I think it would have been a great opportunity just to have her on the bridge coordinating with Ortegas.
I would agree with that for sure. I think it's specifically a problem to the modern writing style of studios these days where they bring up these call sheets and they say, well, all these people are too expensive just to have hanging around, so we're only going to use this set of 10 people today. No one else is on set. Y'all can take the day. We're not paying for you today. I think that's really what it comes down to. And that's one of the things that we lose in ensemble casting shows where we do have regular groups of characters. We're always now going to be beholden to having certain trios that these shows kind of center themselves around. Plot A is going to be Pike. Plot B is going to be Kirk. Okay, because of this, we need to separate whoever's left over on the call sheet into certain buckets. And I think moving forward, we should definitely expect that when it comes to Star Trek, which historically has these big ensemble casts, that certain actors are going to be left behind depending on the story that they are telling.
Yeah, and they should be more proactive in terms of explaining why these characters aren't around, when it makes sense for them to be around otherwise. Plenty of TNG episodes where Geordi's not in this one. We just assume he's in engineering doing nothing interesting, and that's fine. We don't need to see him. You just get the sense that there's life happening around them, but this is a crisis situation. All hands would be on deck, and your spare captain is definitely someone you would have around.
Yeah, and I also can't imagine that a spare captain would be okay with being told by her boyfriend, hey, stay in my quarters while I go save the day.
Yeah, and it could just be that the door is blocked by debris and they can't get to it.
Yeah.
It would have been enough for me, but I was wondering where she was. And when the episode is making me question these things, it's lifting me out of it.
Yeah, I hear what you mean.
Again, it's a common problem with the way that they've structured this show because we have these 10 episodes and characters disappear and reappear. Sam's mentioned in this episode, but he's not there.
Yeah, I would have loved to see Sam, especially having James Kirk on one ship would have been a great moment.
Anything else that you wanted to cover? I think I've worked my way through most of my notes and come up with some new ones.
I liked the log recording scenes that we open with, and in the middle of the episode, when Spock comes in, Kirk says, pause recording during his log.
Yeah, there's a door chime and he's like, pause recording. He doesn't want the crew to hear how uncertain he is.
Yeah.
The log entries are a little too familiar though, aren't they? They're a little too personal.
Yes, I have noticed that modern Trek, the style of dialogue has definitely leaned more familial, not just during the log entries, but also when addressing each other. Not just Pike being on a first name basis with everybody, but also between the different characters, the dialogues and the discussions. There's a point where, I can't remember if it was last episode or maybe it was this episode, but Scotty turns to Spock and says, enhance that bit, would ya? I was like, okay, it's fine. I'm not mad. But at the same time, I'm just thinking, historically, you're on a starship. I understand that we as fans like to say, is Starfleet the military? Well, yes, it is because X. No, it isn't because Y. But at the very least, there are command structures that have historically been followed. So when certain familial tones become too prevalent between characters, it starts to lift me out a little bit because you guys aren't best friends. You know that, right? I'm not even this familiar with my workplace colleagues. I don't speak in HR speak 24/7, but I'm definitely a little bit more clear about the things that I'm requesting, especially of my colleagues. Would you mind enhancing this? Are you capable of managing this task while I do blah, blah, blah. Instead, they kind of bark at each other. And I feel like this is a derivative of the quippy dialogue where everything's got to be quick, 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 quick. It rubs me the wrong way.
And Kirk's opening log entry was definitely first officer's log, wasn't it?
He did say first officer's log.
Which you would expect would be a bit more formal and a bit more factual, I guess. But he's like, I am so bored. Starfleet's going to listen to this, surely. Someone at Starfleet is going to go over this. You can't say that.
Yeah. I know in universe, the log entries all get cataloged. So when you clarify your personal log, that's assigned to you, and then that still gets uploaded to the database in some way, shape, or form, but that's mostly private unless it's requested access. I think they do something in the court-martial episode about that.
Yeah, they talk about the only way to get access to personal logs would be filling out this particular form or whatever it is. There's a whole process. It's your protected thoughts. And I guess people are just in the habit of telling video or audio logs what they're thinking about. Obviously, it was a storytelling shortcut in Berman-era Star Trek particularly. Captain's log, blah, 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 the Enterprise is off doing this, and then you get into the episode.
Right.
Or it's personal log, whatever. We've just had the advert break. I'm just catching you up on what's going on and how my character feels about it.
Exactly.
It's efficient and possibly a little dated, but it's just things like, oh, we get to laugh at Kirk being arrogant and being bored, but I don't feel like he would be that unprofessional. I think that's a problem.
Yeah. But all this to say, I do like the log entries, and one thing I do wish modern Trek would return to is including more of them.
And not knowing the star date as well. What day is this? I get that's supposed to be feeling very routine. The missions are all bleeding together or whatever. I want some excitement.
Yeah, you get a little bit of that in Star Trek Beyond, too. That's how Beyond opens, where Kirk is feeling the routine.
Yeah. He says he feels episodic in that movie.
Yes.
Which is a nice reference.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, the log entries were good, and it's him being vulnerable with himself, and then he's vulnerable with Spock.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have a bit of a laugh and a joke afterwards. It's the beginnings of that dynamic.
Yeah.
Which is maybe something this show shouldn't be giving time to, because it's the Pike and crew show, not the Kirk origin show.
As we've mentioned, yeah.
But we have what we have. And as cynical as it is that they're doing it this way, I had to say I enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was well done. I like this version of Kirk. And I would be mildly interested in seeing a TOS Year One type show, but probably not with these writers.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that assessment. They don't need to do a TOS type show because TOS already exists.
Yes.
You had mentioned something in our previous recording together where a space adventure hour kind of made you feel like they don't like the source material that much, and it almost feels like they're making fun of it as a way to get past it somewhat. I see what you mean. I've been thinking about that as I watch this season in particular, and I had mentioned that I kind of felt that the musical episode sort of took Star Trek Strange New Worlds from being a Star Trek-oriented show into being, well, what kind of fun, zany things can we do while we're doing Star Trek? And that sort of incompatibility for me as a viewer, as an audience member, it just doesn't line up. It doesn't work as well as I think they intend it to. We know we're going to get a Puppets episode, and I'm sure it's going to be delightful. I'm sure it's going to be fun, and I'm sure we're going to have a laugh.
The Jim Henson Company are doing it, so it'll be competently produced.
Exactly. And all this to say, we should have no complaints because, it's the Jim Henson Muppet Company, so they're going to be done really well, and it's a partnership, and blah, blah, blah. But there's also this sentiment of, if you're not taking this seriously, why should I, as an audience member, take the show seriously?
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that Berman-era Star Trek, or if you consider the heyday to be, was all the holy grail. I mean, you had episodes where they turn into children and things like that. There are a lot of dumb episodes. Mm-hmm. But I think broadly they were pushing the boundaries of interesting, compelling storytelling. For example, the time loop episode, Cause and Effect. Time loops weren't a thing that people were doing a lot of back then.
Yeah.
At that point, that was something new or something semi-unique. And there's all sorts of episodes where they tackle interesting social issues. I don't think this episode tackles any real major issues. So ultimately, it's enjoyable, but it's like eating a McDonald's. People use that in reference to the Marvel movies. You like it at the time, but you're hungry an hour later. And I kind of feel like that now that I'm digesting it by talking about it. Well, we have those 7,000 evil humans that were corrupted by something. What are we going to do with that?
That's your science fiction discussion. Back in the 1960s, the problem of them being 7,000 humans on this generational ship would have been in the opening of the episode, and then Kirk and Spock would have found a way to talk them down with a big glorifying speech.
Yeah, Kirk's, your society's stupid, I'm going to fix it type approach that was common in the original series. But yeah, the McDonald's analogy keeps making sense. I enjoyed it. I like a Big Mac, but it's an hour later and I'm hungry. I want something with substance. I want to be nourished, and this isn't nourishing.
No. I enjoyed this episode. This episode so far this season has been the best, in my opinion. I'm definitely going to sit with this episode a little bit, and the only thing that's going to bother me is that we don't get more of these evil humans. That's the big thing that I'm rubbing up against with this episode in particular. It could have done a lot more with it. Man, it would have been a brilliant two-parter in the middle of the season. Leave us out on a cliffhanger with the Enterprise getting swallowed up like that. Holy shit, that would have been so cool to see. Then bring us back next week and solve the problem.
Yeah. The twist at the end of part 1 is, oh, they're humans.
Yeah. And how do you deal with that?
It's something I do in Kneel Before Pod all the time. I find that there's 3 films in the film that I watched that they didn't make, and try and extrapolate how that film could have been made, like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. There's 3 films in there that could have worked. They didn't do any of them, that kind of thing. It's just a common thing that I get into and end up speculating. Sometimes it's unfair to judge the episode on what it isn't rather than what it actually is.
100%.
And I do think this episode works, and they should have just left it at, it's Kirk's trial under fire. He has to solve a problem, he has to take command and deal with something, and then you just have this tacked on interesting story that they could have told that they just don't tell, which I think robs it a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. But still, a good showcase for Paul Wesley's Kirk, and a good backdoor pilot for the show that they will want greenlit in a couple of years. It's just the way it is. That's the way production works. You're already planning your next project while you're doing your current one. Don't worry, you're not enjoying this movie, but the next 3 movies are going to be amazing.
We promise. We promise.
Yeah, we promise.
We spent a lot of money to promise you this.
But can I enjoy this movie? That would be nice. Can I have a good season of this show before you're promising me the next show that I might not like?
Yeah. At least give us good stories that we can sink our teeth into, and we're not just like, all right, we know you're wrapping things up.
Yeah. Any last things?
That's it for me. We covered it in detail.
We sure did. All right. Well, why don't you tell the people on the internet where they can find you?
Awesome. Folks, if you're interested in learning more about me, Mike Slamer, you can find me at Mike Slamer Music on Instagram. You can also follow the show at StarfleetPod on Instagram. Whether we keep it regularly updated or not changes day to day, realistically. That's my fault. So if you want more updates, interact more, and maybe I'll give them to you. I don't know. That's what I got.
Cool. For me, I can mostly be found on Kneel Before Blog, so that's kneelbeforeblog.co.uk. You put it into Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, it'll be there. You can leave a comment on the website itself. There are reviews of Strange New Worlds, so you'll be able to read my review of the episode that we're discussing today, and perhaps there'll be some overlap because it's me. I'm saying these things and then I'll write these things. I haven't written it yet, but I will. There's also podcasts about Superman, the Fantastic Four, might be out by the time you're listening to this, probably not. But it'll be on its way. There's a monthly news podcast. There are interviews. There's plenty of stuff that you can listen to. We recently did our 300th episode, which was streamed live on Twitch and YouTube. And there's a condensed audio version where we cut out all the stuff that you can't see that was talked about during the 300th stream. So plenty there to dig into. And on the socials, Twitter and Blue Sky, I'm under Nemesis4909, which was originally a Resident Evil reference that later became also a Star Trek reference. That is me. So get us dragged away with her no nacelles, and we have to apologize to the Admiral.
Take us out.
Hit it.